Welcome to another unauthorized and rough trash the sharky waters around the Gatsby Islands with Queen Raae. I'm almost not in the camera. My camera is moving on its own.
I am just gonna share this.
Yeah.
Because Lillian and I just came home from London a couple of hours ago. What?
Mamma sier at dere kom nettopp hjem fra London.
Let's fix my hair. It's an important aspect of the show. We just came home from London, and maybe some people watching were there. We had a little London Gatsby / indie hacker, I guess, in the Slow and Steady podcast meetup. It was super nice to finally meet some people in person. Woo-hoo! That was a lot of fun. So I'm just gonna share this over here at the Gatsby Discord. We are live, and if you are watching this, hello, Noman, and if you're watching this, please share somewhere.
But say who you met.
Oh, so I met Sid, formerly of Gatsby, and now he's at Cloudflare. I met Scott, who's often in the chat here on our show. And then I met Michael, who's a listener of the Slow and Steady podcast that I do with Benedict of Userlist, who's also actually been on our show. So, it's becoming a tiny, tiny little world here we're building.
Yes! Lillian, was you at the pub? Var du på puben og møtte Sid? Ja.
Yes. Oh, Nico, I'm so sorry you didn't see the tweets.
No, I must read the comment.
Okay.
Well, I missed out big time on meeting the real Queen. That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Er du klar, Lillian? I drove past London, Ontario a few weeks ago. Does that count? Is it a win?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
What
And
does
Nico,
J
next time
came in?
I don't know. I should know. It's probably internet slang. I should know. I'll try and ping people more personally next time. I realized I had a hard time remembering who was. I felt like most of the people I knew in England were like far from London, but it turns out a lot of them are just like located in places that are just like half an hour from London. But I like in my mind it was like farther from London. Oh, hello, Inessa. Maybe you also drove past London, Ontario.
But you're saying that Nico kind of lives in or around London?
He can come into London. Like, so he is... Oh, just kidding. JK is just kidding, John is telling us.
JK.
I like that you are... on with the internet slang. So no, London was super cool, but should we jump into this? So for people watching this in a replay, if I have time, I'll add description, or I add timestamps in the descriptions down below. If you find a timestamp, share it with us in the comments, and then I'll try to collect them. But anyway, what are we doing today, Ola? You need to remind me with the little Tasker Bell note, so I do it correctly.
I didn't hear that because suddenly I had forgot to turn off the sound on YouTube. So I heard what you said earlier. Something about timestamps, something.
Yeah, well, we were done with that. But the Tinker Tasker Bell. I need the Tasker Bell.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I need to take away this. Oh, sorry.
Okay. What are we doing? So today we are going to be utilizing the Gatsby Cache, the built-in Gatsby Cache, for our YouTube source embed plugin. So we have this YouTube plugin that we've been working on several streams that you might remember. And today we're going to utilize the Gatsby Cache to speed up sourcing of these videos from the external API. So And then what is that? And then why we're doing this, so that especially our dev builds will be faster, because often while we're developing, we are sourcing nodes again and again, because whenever you do any big changes, it's going to run through source node, kind of that source nodes hook, and then it will hit it will hit the YouTube embed endpoint for each video. So we're going to do some caching magic so that we don't have to hit that external API or that external endpoint every time. And then we'll be utilizing the Gatsby Cache.
It's not the same thing. It's not the cache that I kind of delete.
Yes, it is. So you can add things to a cache layer, and then if you do Gatsby clean, it will delete the cache layer. And obviously Gatsby caches a lot of things for us, but we can also cache things and use in our plugins, or just, in our Gatsby node, or our, those different files. So we're going to be using the cache when we are sourcing data or sourcing videos, I guess, in our, oh boy, I am tired. In our Gatsby node file inside of our plugin. Let's jump into the code and everything.
Bring on the magic.
Bring on the magic. The magic. Ooh, 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 the magic. Okay, so somebody had fun yesterday, and that was me. Also, whoever was here last time, I got myself a new keyboard. After last stream where nothing on my keyboard was working, I went out and I got one of the official Magic Apple keyboards.
Oh,
so I'm still not completely. I'm still not completely used to it, but actually the buttons are working, which is great news.
It's an improvement.
It's an improvement. So let's try to zoom in here, because it's equal. I can never zoom in because Google has changed that. No, now it's back. It's back. Okay, so we can do. Do you know what? Did you see that, Ulla? You can do Apple Plus again in Chrome. I don't know why they keep changing that, but yes. I can from London. Yeah, like now when I went to here zoom in, it's again Apple Key Plus instead of Apple Key equals. Okay, I'm just gonna show you. So, I'm not sharing my screen, which then obviously nothing makes sense to anyone.
I'll read John then. Jet lag.
So much, yeah. Jet lagged from. Well, I had to get up at like 6 this morning to catch the plane, so I do feel jet lag. Anyway, this is our awesome demo page that you can see here. So we're sourcing 2 videos, and this is the demo page, and the kind of.
Are you on the POW page now?
No, it's just it's just a demo.
Oh,
the demo for our plugin, yeah.
But we are using this plugin on the POW page, so it's very useful for POW.
Yes, well, it's not super. I wouldn't say it's super useful for POW, but we're going to use it on the marketing page to source some videos without adding the YouTube tracking code. So we'll just use HTML instead of adding any of the YouTube JavaScript that then will track people who are on our marketing page. So we are in the kind of regular folder structure that if you've used my plugin starter, we have a plugin folder and we have a demo folder. So I've been doing some work here in the demo folder to make sure that we got that demo site. We are calling, we're getting the thumbnails and that we did on another stream. We are actually we're sourcing the video information using the embed endpoint that gives us a little bit of data. It gives us the link to a thumbnail image, and then we actually source even that image into our data layer using the create remote file node function. So all of this we've done in an earlier stream, and today we're going to try to speed everything up. But I'm going to just work you through these demos. We have the thumbnails, and we're just looping over it. We're showing the thumbnails with our Gatsby image. So that is kind of our demo here. And then if we head on back to our Gatsby node code to walk you through what is happening. So on the first thing that is happening is that Gatsby will call our source nodes kind of hook here. And there we take the YouTube IDs that we've given as options in our Gatsby config file in the demo, which are 2 videos. Then we do a promise all where we loop over the videos, and then we create a YouTube node for each of the videos. So I've done some creative, what's it called? Creative logging here, so we can see what is happening. And then inside of create YouTube node, we fetch. So here we fetch the data, and then we create the node, and then we say, let's create YouTube node. And what happens after when you create a node in Gatsby, what is called next, it's the on create node. And this is where we then say, oh, if this is a YouTube node, we are going to source that create file node. So it's going to go out on the internet, grab that file, and create a remote file node from that. And then we add that as a node field on our YouTube node. And then we say we've created a file node here in our reporter. And if we head on up to it's all the way on the bottom. We are then creating a schema where we're saying that this thumbnail is of type file and it links here. So all of this we've done in earlier videos. That was very like a super quick walkthrough. But what we'll see is that every time, and now I got to get used to my new keyboard, it looks like. There. Every time we run yarn develop, if we have a look at our logging here, we'll see that we'll be sourcing and creating every time. So yeah, so we create a YouTube node for for the two videos, create YouTube node, but nothing is happening with the inside of the on create because the data hasn't changed. So our Gatsby digest hasn't changed. We create a node here and we set a content digest that is based on the data we're getting back from that OEmbed endpoint. And if nothing changes here, Gatsby caches this and won't kick off the on create node. So that is kind of nice for us. So if we do a Gatsby clean, Gatsby clean, and then do develop again, we'll see that it will source both of the nodes, and then it will create the file nodes, and then it will run, like image sharp type transformations on image files. So here we see we have, we create the two nodes, and then we ask Gatsby to create them, then they are created, and then we also created a file node for each of these videos. And then we are then running Gatsby plugin sharp image processing job for both of those file nodes. So what Gatsby gave us with its own caching, like, okay, nothing has changed with the data for this node, so we don't need to like do the next steps. We don't need to do what is in on create node. So they help us with that. We don't have to go out and source that image file every time, because Gatsby knows that nothing has changed. It's not going to go out and source that image file again. But if something has changed with the data, it will go out and source that image file again. And that is the reason why we are not creating this file. We are not creating the remote file node. We're not creating that in the source node hook in here inside of source node. We could have done it in there, but then it will be done every time. We're doing it inside of onCreate node so that we can utilize Gatsby's own kind of caching mechanisms. But what is happening here, now I've done some weirdness here. So this is what happens with like my new keyboard and everything. Okay, but let's do some logging, just some good old console log inside of our fetch. Let's just log out the data we're getting back, the YouTube URL, and then the data we're getting back. If I now run another, yarn develop, we'll probably see that it's going to go out and ask that endpoint and get the data back. And then it's going to be like, okay, nothing has changed. Well, this time it's changed because I messed up the caching. But the next time we run it, it's going to be like, nothing has changed. So we're not going to do that rest of the part. But and that is totally okay. We're only sourcing like 2 videos. So hitting that YouTube OEmbed endpoint for those 2 videos, like no problem, right? But if we have, you know, thousands or hundreds or something like that videos, we don't want it to be calling out to that YouTube OEmbed endpoint all the time, because, you know, the internet might be slow and you don't want that. Or in the case of if you're using the actual YouTube API, it has some severe limitations. So if you're developing and you are calling out to that API point every time you're doing changes to your code, then you're going to hit that limit really fast. So, you know, you might want to limit how often you call that remote API. Okay, please ask questions in the chat because I will be writing about this tomorrow. So any clarifying questions is super duper so that I can be more concise and specific and answer your questions in tomorrow's email. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're not using Fetch, you are using Axios?
Yes, I love Axios.
You know what? Vart just told me on Gatsby Conf. Axios is evil.
Oh no, I have to stop using it then.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, why do people use Axios? It's so heavy. It kills your performance. You should use Fetch.
Okay, well, we're in the back end, so who cares?
Since you have been abroad, I'm going to have some caviar. And don't worry, people, it's not Russian.
It's Norwegian caviar.
And I'm putting it on. You see the head here? I put a little bit of a beanie, as they call it in the States, or a lue, as you call it in Norway, on the top of the egg. There you go.
So let's head on over to Gatsby Cache. So what we want to then do, or what I'm going to try to do here, is that I'm going to write it here in my, like, as a note. Why? Oh, see, this is what happens. It just suddenly changes to American keyboard layout instead of the Norwegian. Okay. We want, so if recently fetched to not create node, use already created node. So that is kind of what we want to do. And to do that, we will need to store some things in the cache. And what the solution I came up with here, and there's several ways of doing this, is that we'll save the YouTube ID that we're fetching data for, and then the timestamp when it was last fetched. You could also cache the data coming back instead of a timestamp, and just check if it's no, we still need a timestamp. And then you could just create nodes with that same data, and then we would stop, like, you know, we would stop that chain of command where things happening because the data hasn't changed. But we're going to do it a little bit differently. So the only thing we're going to save in the cache is the YouTube node ID. No, not the YouTube node ID, the YouTube ID, and then the timestamp that we fetched it. And how do we get access to the cache? So the cache is part of our YouTube, not a YouTube. Oh my God, I'm so tired. not part of YouTube. It's part of our Gatsby utils. Our Gatsby utils. Yes. And it's together here with reporter and all of that. So let's do cache. So
I can just get my. What is it you're actually? Is that like my cache, my actual cache that is coming there in the utils?
Yes.
All the stuff in the cache?
No, it's but it's exposed using a set and get function.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
But we have to await.
Yeah.
So let's start. So what did I say? We wanted to save the timestamp for the YouTube ID. So if it's saved, we'll like try to get it. Const YouTube timestamp should then be, we need to await, and then we'll do cache get. And we'll get the information for our YouTube ID. So it's asking us for the information it has about YouTube ID. And then I would like to see if that time timestamp is, shorter than my refresh timestamp. So you will decide like how often do you want to hit the YouTube, how often would you want to hit the YouTube OEmbed endpoint for new data. So let's. You have to mute yourself, and my brain cannot handle listening and thinking. Okay, so we want to then do the existing. So we want to do the age. So YouTube fetch age, for instance, is then date now, and then minus the YouTube timestamp that we got, YouTube timestamp. But in case it's nothing, we should probably do, date now. So then let's just pretend, no, not nothing, like do 0, I guess, something like that. YouTube fetch age, it's date now, YouTube timestamp. So if our YouTube fetch age is less, or it's less or equal to our refresh interval. So let's set it to, and I never remember these, calculation. So let's say, 6,000 milliseconds is 1 minute. So let's do 1 minute times 5. So let's do 5 minutes. If it's, or let's say if it's more than our refresh limit, then let's do everything we've done. Okay. And then if not, well, I'm gonna not do 0 there. So either if the YouTube timestamp is empty, or the YouTube fetch age is larger than our refresh interval, it's larger than 5 minutes, then we want to, we want to create a node ID, we want to fetch the data, we want to create our node and everything. But what happens if we don't create a node, but we know that we have a node there from like the last time around that we created? Because Gatsby caches our nodes. That's how they know if something has changed. So they have that node, and internally it will check to see if this digest has changed. So it kind of has that node hanging around. But when you do source node again, it will, after it's done source node and it kind of sees what nodes you're creating, the nodes that haven't kind of been recreated, even though they haven't changed, you call the create node, it will flush out and kind of like throw away at all of the nodes that are not being touched by anything. So in our case, we're not creating a new node, or we're not trying to create a node with the same data then Gatsby would handle and be like, oh, I've cached this already, I'm going to use my cached node. So we have to tell it somehow that we still want that node we created the last time around to kind of like hang around. So hopefully my logic here is correct, because my example is not completely similar. So if this is not happening, like if we have a timestamp and that timestamp is less than 5 minutes, we want to just touch, it's called touch node. We want to touch the node that was already created. So let's see where we got that code. Yeah, so it's touch node, and that is coming from our actions. So we need to get touch node from actions.
Can I say something? It's not really a question, but
yeah,
to me the nodes are like bags of loot, pirate loot. So there's all kinds of stuff in there, and then I know it's not exactly right, but that digest thing is like a little. How you have these little cards on your Christmas presents, and it says who it's for and from. So it's just a little card with some kind of information. I'm not exactly sure what the information is, but
no, but that is a super good analogy, because okay, so what is happening with Gatsby when it's using its cache under the hood? It's like you have all that loot, you have all those bags, and then we are asking YouTube for the OEmbed data, and we get that back, and then we make it into like a label. That's what we do with create content digest. We take all of that data and then we create a hash, which is like a tiny little string, but it will change if the data changes. So, and then we'll do our own hash on that data again, or Gatsby does the hash on the data coming in, and it looks, and it's like, oh, these labels are the same. Oh, then I don't need to kind of create that bag. I already have that bag. So it like matches the labels.
But it's for each bag. It's not for the whole pile of loot. No, every bag has a little label. Okay.
Every bag has a little label with its digest result, which is a hash. And then you get the new data from YouTube in, and you hash it, and then you look at the label, and you're like, oh, I already, the data hasn't changed. Instead of opening the bag and like putting new things in and grabbing that file over here and then putting that in, stuff that we're doing on create node, we say we already have the bag. We're going to put it over here in the pile. We already have it. And obviously the source plugin still wants it because it's trying to create it again. So instead of creating it again, we're just moving it over here into like active bags. And then you have a bunch of bags that you've not tried to recreate or not tried to do anything with. And what Gatsby does then is just throw them out because we're not interested in those anymore.
You know who told me that the first time?
Who?
This guy here. You recognize this guy here?
Oh, yeah, Jason Lengstorff.
When he was here on the show, he said that, so why is that content digest required? And then he came up with that little note. You see the little note there? Mm-hmm. And for some reason, I have Freddie Mercury as Gatsby there. I don't know why, but that's just how it was. And and I have my actual gold coins down. Yeah. That was one of our first shows. It's a long time ago. It's a year ago.
Oh my gosh.
No, it can't be.
Yeah, so that is one way to keep this node around that's already been created, is trying to create it again. And then if that data is the same, instead of creating it again, Gatsby will just use the one it already has and move it over here. But since we are not asking YouTube for that data, and we don't have that data laying around, we could have cached the data, but I decided not to. So I just cached a timestamp. But since I know then that, we don't want to ask YouTube for that data again and then put it in and then hash it and see if the labels are the same, we can just say touch node. And what Gatsby will do then is go over to that bag that has that same ID. So on the little label, there will be the ID and then that hash. Those would be the two things. So it's going to, instead of checking the hash to see if that is the same, it's going to say like, okay, it's asking me to touch this node with this node ID. Okay, so I'm going to bring it over here with my active nodes. That's another way to get that node to stay around for the next kind of round of build. And the way to touch a node is that you actually have to get it, and we can get a node by using another Gatsby util, which is get node. So we're going to grab a node that is already exists. We can do that down here. So we're going to do existing node. Existing node. That is not the correct wording, but let's use that. And then we're going to use the ID of the node. So that would not be the YouTube ID, but that will be the ID of the Gatsby node. And how do I get that? I get that from, I need to save that as well. So I'm going to get the YouTube ID. I'm going to get the YouTube ID, and then I'm going to say that inside of the YouTube ID, what we are saving is both a timestamp and a existing node ID. So existing, I'm just going to copy what I have. So I'm going to do existing node ID. I'm going to take the cache if I have it. Or let's call this the YouTube cache instead. And I'm going to take the YouTube cache. Like whatever we saved, we're going to split it on a dash, because what I'm actually going to be saving to the cache is a YouTube ID YouTube ID or the YouTube node ID, so the existing YouTube node ID, and then the timestamp. So I have both those information present. So YouTube node ID and then the timestamp. I'm gonna split it, and then if there is no YouTube cache, we're gonna do a empty array. So we're splitting the string that should come back from the cache that has the existing YouTube node ID and then the timestamp. So we are getting the existing node ID and then the timestamp. And then we can grab our existing node. See, I'm going to copy paste some of our cheat sheets. So because I'm realizing I'm getting tired. So existing node, we're going to get that from using get node and using that existing node ID. Then we're going to get our existing node age. And then we'll do, if we have an existing node, if we don't have an existing node, and our YouTube or our existing node, sorry, if we have, oh my God, I have the different logic here. I need to swap everything. So
that's okay.
Sorry. So we're swapping the logic here. We're going to do, because I cannot think straight. So if we have an existing node and then the node age is less than our refresh interval, we're going to touch the node. If not, we're going to create it like we did before. So let's delete my other logic here. So if it's gotten lost somewhere because we've been doing, something else, and then we then touch a node, which is what I was talking about. So instead of trying to recreate this node with data, we're just saying that we know the node already exists, so let's touch it, and we're then telling Gatsby to take that bag over to our active pile of bags so that it doesn't get thrown away when Gatsby moves on. And then we can do a reporter info on touched YouTube node for that YouTube ID. So I think this should be correct. So if it already exists, we touch it. And if not, we try to create it. So let's try to run this. And let's see what happens in our log here.
Yes. Lillian just spoke English to me.
Oh. We have been practicing a little bit.
So she said no, but maybe she learned something else. Oh, somebody has a question here. I see a question. I have. Oh, it's John. Yes. Okay. Rare, of course. A build fails for whatever reason, and one runs Gatsby clean to fix this. Will this new Gatsby cache allow what is saved to be prevented from being deleted from the main cache? That was a very bad John voice, by the way. Sorry.
No, because it's the same. That is what it gets cleaned. The Gatsby cache is what gets thrown away when we do a Gatsby clean. And that is why.
So we can't keep the ones that we say keep these?
No, because when you do, so a lot of plugins and Gatsby internally uses the cache, and then, caching is difficult. So that is why we often have to do, Gatsby clean, because something is wrong in the cache, and that could be, sometimes it's Gatsby that has done something bad, or one of the plugin authors like myself has done something, not considered all the edge cases, and things get like botched in with the cache. For instance, if I didn't check to see if the cache was already there, like if I'd done something wrong here where it fails, like I might have to, if I decide to change how I save this cache data, and I don't tell anyone, and you have, you already cached data in one format, and then I change it, then everything will fail because it's not what it's expected to be. And that is why we have kind of that way out of using Gatsby clean. But yeah, so Gatsby clean will wipe the whole cache, and all the, everything that Gatsby has done on a build, and kind of start over. So it's shouldn't, and I feel like Gatsby's getting better and better. Like it's less often that we need to do the Gatsby clean. In the early days, I had it so it would do Gatsby clean before every Gatsby develop because it always was messing up, but I don't feel like it does so much anymore. Okay, so we ran Gatsby develop, and as we can see, we called the endpoint and we got the data back. And then in theory, if I run it again now, it should not be calling the API endpoints anymore because we already have information in the cache, but it is. So I don't know what's wrong. Oh boy. Oh, do you know why? Because we're not saving to the cache. So we are getting from the cache, but we're not saving to the cache. So after we've done, we've done all of this, we need to save to the cache so that we have something to get at a different point. So what we want to do then is that we want to set a string at the same of the same format that we're expecting here. So we'll do await cache and then set, and the key that we are saving it on is the YouTube ID. So that has nothing to do with Gatsby. That's a YouTube ID that we are sourcing. And then we decided on a format, or I decided on a format, where it's the YouTube node ID. So that would be the Gatsby YouTube node ID, dash, and then a timestamp. So that's going to be date now. So when we've been fetching the data, we got the data, we created the node, and then we save to the cache the timestamp and the ID of that created node ID.
Cool. I like it.
And then let's do yarn develop again. So I realized when I develop, I would have done the set cache first and then done the other part where we're getting. But I thought the other way would be smarter, but I don't know what would have been the best way to explain it. So of course now it called the YouTube API again, and then hopefully if we run it again now, it will not. I might not have let it go far enough that it's created the Gatsby node. So let's make it go all the way until it's done, so that everything is saved to cache and stuff like that. Yes, if you read John's.
I will. Sorry. Oh. Some workflow. No. That's totally wrong.
Why is it not working?
Some workflows people write to run their builds runs a Gatsby clean first on every build. Maybe because they're always running into errors. Cry emoji. And not me though. Lol. I prefer to use a KISS methodology. Keep it simple, stupid methodology.
Yeah. But somehow this is not working. It worked in my notes. So
you're basically
let's see
saying
what's
that
happening.
don't do that. Don't run Gatsby clean every time.
Yes, don't run. Yeah, I'm saying that.
But why?
Because then you clean the cache every time, and you don't get any of the optimizations that Gatsby's trying to do for you, because you are cleaning out the cache every time. So none of the
build will take longer.
Yes. So for instance, if we clean out the cache here before our own cache, before we mess with our cache ourselves, it would then have to recreate all of those file nodes every time you run, because you have cleaned out the cache that is telling Gatsby that nothing has changed to the YouTube node, and you don't have to do everything that you do every time you create the YouTube node. But let's debug this then, because it's not working. So the first thing I will do is to console log and check to see if we are getting any cache, and see if that might be the problem.
So it's not working?
it's not working, and this is what happens when you code tired. So let's see.
Oh, John says thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Okay, so we're obviously getting a cache. So, oh yeah, I remember running into this issue when I was working on this myself, because I decided to have the kind of split between the YouTube ID and the timestamp be a dash, but the YouTube nodes use dash in their ID. So what has happened is that, when we say split on dash, it's like splitting up on all of these.
Oh.
So we should do another one. And I've seen Gatsby, when they try to make sure that they're not using something, they are doing they're using this, like angle bracket or angle bracket, angle bracket, angle bracket. So let's use that, and we need to change that in both places. So if you remember to subscribe to the emails tomorrow, I'm gonna send out an example where all of these options that we're doing, like with the split character and all of that, is part of the plugin options, and also gets set by default, so they're not hard coded everywhere. But for streaming, it works better with hard coding. But so make sure you subscribe so that you can see how this works when you clean it up properly. Okay, so now we're doing the angle bracket, angle bracket, angle bracket instead. So we're splitting on that, and we're using that there. So let's see if that helps. That almost looked like a planned bug, didn't it, Ola? It was like, oh, but I remember, but it wasn't planned. So
I liked it that you had the Gatsby angle bracket thing.
Yeah. I forgot to prep water today. I'm a little out of it. Where's my... Oh, well.
Lilian.
Okay, so let's run it again now and see if it gets cached. Oh, now I see what's happening. I am pressing this button I didn't even know existed that moves it into American. Okay, well, that makes sense. But why? I want to change it to American. So what I'm hoping now is that it's going to say touched instead of, yeah, so yay, we got further. I copy pasted some code, and we don't have a refresh interval defined. So let's do refresh interval. And we're going to do, what did I say? 6,000, which is 1 minute times 5. So that should be 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And let's do it again.
I'm trying to get the Pirate Princess to get herself some more food, but she just says no. So when you were there in London with your father, did you feel that he was kind of piratey? Did he do anything piratey or say anything that you can... Huh? No? Not at all?
I don't know. Feels like he's getting less and less piratey with the years.
Okay, that's bad.
I'm just going to log some more things so that we make sure that everything is working. So let's see, existing node age.
He likes drinking in the pub, though. That's piratey.
That is piratey. So we did go drinking in the pub, which was super nice. And I was told that Lillian shouldn't be hanging onto the bar.
Scott bought your father drinks.
Yes.
Which beer? Was it beer? Some kind of lager thing?
Oh, it's working. So I think... So now it says touched YouTube node.
Yes.
Touched YouTube node, because it already knew that there was a YouTube node, Gatsby YouTube node, that existed, and then it touches it so that it won't go away. And then if we do yarn clean, it's gonna wipe the cache. So when we do another yarn develop, it will go and fetch that data from the YouTube OEmbed endpoint again. And what is super interesting is that if you either, of course, you could do it in your code, but you could also do it when configuring a plugin that I'm going to share with you over the coming days. You can have a different interval for production and development, because I do think, I'm not 100% sure how Gatsby does this in production, but they do cache in production as well, I think. And you could then have maybe like a minute, like if it's older than a minute, you're going to refresh it. And then in development, you could do like 10 minutes. So when you're developing, when you're doing a lot more builds, you make sure that you have a much higher interval, because you're not often that interested in the freshest data when you're in development, because you're probably doing more of that, like looking at, fixing up the UI or like doing whatever is going to happen on the page. And you could also then set the refresh interval to 0, and it would always go and fetch the new data from the YouTube OEmbed endpoint. So if you, especially I feel, if you make a refresh interval become an option of your plugin, then the person using the plugin could decide in the Gatsby config, they could configure what is the refresh interval that they want, and then they could decide, do I want a different interval for production and development, or any kind of like logic, without them having to go into your code, obviously, because that would be bad. So and then if we run it again now, it should do touch instead of and now it said touch YouTube node instead of create YouTube node. Yoo-hoo, it's working. Boo, boo. So let's remove this log. Any questions in the chat? Let me know.
No questions. Oh, yes, you want them to ask.
I want them to ask. I wanted to say again that a different approach to this caching could be that you cached the timestamp and the data coming from YouTube, and then you check if the timestamp is, if the age of the node is low, below the refresh interval here. Instead of a touch node, you would do a create node, but use that cached data, and then Gatsby would know that since the content hasn't changed, it doesn't have to do all of the other stuff. Like then it would do the checking of the label to see if the hash is the same. But instead of, and I'm not exactly sure like how big can we let the cache become, and I haven't really looked into that. So I thought it would be nicer to just save the YouTube, the node ID and the timestamp, because that is less data. And obviously for this example, the data coming back is very small. But maybe if you're sourcing data that is a lot bigger, then I am thinking, or I'm guessing, it's good to not fill up the cache with like the full response from all these APIs. So that's why I went with the approach of saving the Gatsby node, the Gatsby YouTube node ID, and then touching on that ID, that node, instead of trying to recreate it with the same data from the cache. But that would also be a valid approach. Yeah.
Great.
So now, even if the internet went down, I could still keep on working on or if the if the YouTube APIs went down, I could still keep on working on the site until I did Gatsby clean, though, because then I would wipe the cache and it would go out on the internet and hit that endpoint again. Yeah, but really powerful stuff. But beware, caching, naming, and dates are the hardest things in programming, and here we are dating and we are caching. So be aware that things might get harder than you would think. Tusen tack. Look at that. I got a bubbly. A bubbly. We made it under the hour. I thought this would be like a 30-minute stream.
Well then, that's good. I like it. Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm gonna let's do this format. And then for the people who are with us all the way to the end, we can then announce that next week we're going to continue on our journey with this plugin, the Gatsby Source YouTube OEmbed plugin, where we use the OEmbed endpoint where you don't need an API key to source up-to-date information about the YouTube videos that you want to source. And then next week, Ward, what's his last name again?
Peters
is coming on to show us how...
It might actually be Peters. We must ask him.
Yeah.
You know what JD asked him?
No.
JD said, so, if your name is Peters, last name, and I'm Peter's son, does that make me your son? And Bart was like, no, because we're the same age, you know? Yeah.
Oh, I was trying to like look at you the right way, but it feels weird sitting like this, even though I'm now looking at you. It's just like, what if I put you over there? Oh, now it becomes more natural. Okay. So what is coming on next week to show us how we can make this plugin play nicely with the new image CDN. So the CDN.
Oh, the image CDN.
Yes. So the image CDN, the new product from Gatsby that they announced in Gatsby Conf, does not play nicely with local files. So if you are using Markdown and or if you're using Gatsby source file system to source all of your content, then the image CDN doesn't work for those types of image files yet. But it works for external images. And in this plugin, we are sourcing external images because we're sourcing these thumbnails from YouTube.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think this is going to be an exciting one because there aren't that many plugins except the big ones like Contentful and the WordPress source plugin, the Contentful source plugin, and then I think Sanity is like coming along.
Are they though? Are they?
I think they are. So they're coming along with
rumors?
I think on the Gatsby Conf it said it was like coming in the next week or so. But then I think like our little source plugin that we've been slow and steady building here on our streams, it's going to be one of the first plugins that will get image CDN support. So that's
because I really want to try it, but I was like, I looked at my WordPress thing and I was like, oh no, I'm not getting back into that kind of stuff. and yeah, so that's great. I want to try it. Then I can use the plugin on the POW website, and then. Oh, yeah.
And you know what is good? Oh, I didn't even think about that because, okay, so privacy-wise, this is super cool. This just hit me because, one of the reasons we didn't want to use the YouTube API, we could use the YouTube API to source the data, but we didn't want to use that embed code from YouTube to embed our videos on our POW marketing website because we don't really want Google to know or track the people visiting our website. And as soon as you have that embed code, they can track it. Yeah. But also, if you use, but we don't because Gatsby actually sources this already into. Yeah, so that's one of the good things about using the Gatsby data layer is that now we are not using that external YouTube URL for the image. We're not using the URL. We're not using the image on Google servers because even if we were just using that image and not their tracking script, they could, in theory, track, visits to our page because we're calling their servers to get that image. But since we're using the Gatsby content layer, we are taking that image into our site and we're like including it in our site.
But is it 100% safe though? Because can't they have like some tracking thing in the image itself?
No, because we're copying the image into the Gatsby data layer, so it has no connection with their thing anymore.
Great.
Yeah. And then the question is, okay, if we're going to source, this isn't going to happen for POW though, but let's say we're going to have like 1,000 of these thumbnails, sourced into our Gatsby site and into our Gatsby data layer, our build would be very slow. So I think what most people would do would then just be like, oh, we're just going to use that external link to the YouTube image. But now with the image CDN, we could get, we can offload that, but still keep it within the Gatsby ecosystem, which is a hosting platform. And of course, they then have numbers on that, but like their business isn't to collect data on everyone in the world to sell them crappy stuff. So that was an interesting privacy angle I hadn't thought about when we are now we're sourcing everything into Gatsby instead of utilizing and linking out to YouTube.
So YouTube, Contentful, and WordPress are the 3 CMSs that will have this.
Yeah, since we use YouTube as a CMS, which is kind of funny. Yep.
Are we finishing up? You can't.
Yeah,
you can't gå innan för att du må vara med här och spilla.
Did you want to read John's thing?
Okay, go.
Okay. I muted you. Somebody is very tired from the London trip, so
it's not me.
She's excused. She's excused today.
But you're saying that no. She has to be here for the outro, or else she'll be.
Oh yeah, she'll be mad if she misses out. Yeah.
I'll read it then. Pirate voyage on the sharky waters. Just amazing.
Thank you, John. It means a lot for us if you're here in the chat. It is a constant.
Yes, pirate. A co-pirate.
I can't even say it in English. Like I have some. Like I wanted. I appreciate it. I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Also, while you're waiting for the Pirate Princess, I can do a plug.
Yeah, but I gotta say one thing. Okay, people, please send me questions for Vart. If you want to know about his private life, his childhood. We already know a little bit about his goats, but he also have horses and stuff. So you want to know something, or he used to work at Google, and he could tell us stuff. I think she's back. Yeah, do your plug.
And also, if you have any questions about the image CDN, he's probably happy to answer those as well. I'm gonna do my plug. So if you know a SaaS founder, if you know a SaaS founder that is swamped by support requests, on how to integrate their SaaS with Gatsby Next or even plain React, please send them the link to our new service, a done-for-you integration demo, where we create a demonstration of how to integrate other SaaSes like CMSs or form services, or in case of our client Outseta membership software, and you want to have a demonstration on how to use that service with Gatsby or Next or React, then send them our way and we'll make it for them. And they can be as happy as a Jeff from Outseta.
So that would be the plus. Click the plus.
Click the plus.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So send any SaaS founder who has a little too much to do, and we'll take that one job off their hands, and we'll do it very. What's it called? Suddenly, very.
Yeah, try to see it. Read his words.
Yes, I was gonna say, because I think he says it.
Very little oversight.
Very little oversight. So if they are very busy, it's hard to outsource, but we can do it with very little oversight. Yes.
And I have to say then that I was also working on this project.
Yes.
I did prep work. I tried out different things and bumbled along, and then I had questions and kind of warmed you up so that when you were doing it,
it was a super efficient process, because you worked on it over I think it was like a week, a little bit here and there, and you kept sending me questions, and I was like thinking about it while I was doing other things. So when I sat down to do the demonstration, I kind of knew what you were asking, and I knew what he had sent me some support requests that they have gotten, and like all of that was in my mind when I sat down and created the demo. Actually became like 3 little demos on how to integrate Outsetza with a plain React application. And I just, then it was easier to kind of get that out there because it'd been like simmering in the back of my mind for a long time. So that was a really good collab there internally in Lily Labs. Yeah. Okay, let's do the outro.
Okay, Lilian. Are du på vei?
Here it is. If you want to send somebody there. Because I think
queenraae.code /
done for you demo. But I think the easiest is to go to queenraae.code and click on the done for you integration demo.
Oh, it's all the way there at the top. Yeah. Lilian, du må komme.
Because somebody, and it was a private conversation, so I won't say who, asked me today, where I worked, during the daytime, and I work on, like, this is our work.
Yes.
We are independent, and we want to help people get the most out of Gatsby with demos and plugins and training material.
Okay.
Okay. I'll make you guys big and then
begynn å spille. 1, 2, 3. This has been another unauthorized and rum-fueled treasure hunt in the sharky waters around the Gatsby Islands with Queen Raae. I'm your host, Captain Olavea. This is the pirate Princess Lilian. Remember to smash that like button, friends. See you next time. Få se den I munnen din.
Okay, my quick.
Lilian, she's got lots of food in the mouth. Du må blåse med nesa. Nei, du må blåse. Tuller ikke. Vi kan ha matrester. Blås med nesa. Kom igjen, du klarer det. Ikke munnen. Ok, blås med munnen. Greit.